I'm Coach Mo, the national director of FBC, and I'm on the call tonight to just kind of show my support and kind of hear the vision and the game plan. As we move forward with the Carolinas, I know that we have one big entity that we're trying to do. We also have the rain that has came aboard, and I'm happy that Alexis is representing them online. And I just wanna kind of hear the plan for the Carolinas as we start to move forward and try to, do something trend setting in the area.
Perfect, perfect. Thanks, Mo. And then also Chris, sort of one that kind of was the first person to put the stake in the ground and say, "Hey, Mo, I'm going to help you get FBC really rolling up here in the Carolinas." And Chris is involved with a lot of things. Maybe Chris, just give us a quick rundown of your role and where you're at, that kind of thing. It'd be great.
Tonight, Lynn, you and I have been working really just trying to get some unification, something that our states haven't really had. So in terms of FBC, my daughter played with Mo and Keisha 3 or 4 years ago, and I've been doing it for a while, and as well as from different angles, from a player development, things like that. But my primary purpose is to help build something that's so unique that these families don't have to make the inconvenient move that I did for 4 straight years to drive to Atlanta, but do it at a high level here and unify the state so that these girls, whether it's high major, mid major, D2, D3, we put the program together that has the recognition and that can still be synonymous with the FBC brand. And that's really what my commitment is. So it's not really about me at all. I want to do whatever it takes to unify the state and make sure we put together some girls that can really impact the next level of basketball.
That's right, man. I got you. You're the glue, man. You're one of the pieces that holding it together. All right, so look, let me jump into this, gang. Like I said, I'm gonna kind of go through this quick just because I want to make sure we get the whole vision out, and then we'll hit questions and stuff as we get to the end. So really, this is a 3-year process, man. We're really we're getting ready to start year 2 with our integration FBC in the state. But the goal is, for most everybody on this call, like I know many of you, and I know the experience you got, and I know the history you got, and I know the amazing successes that so many of you have. But if you look at the landscape of our game for girls basketball in the Carolinas, I think we can really, if we're honest with ourselves, these are the things that I think we have to recognize. Number one is super fragmented. There's pockets of talent everywhere, but nothing's ever really bonded them together very well. Number two, it's crazy inefficient for moving talent forward. I see talent moving side to side, switching from this team to that team and playing for this coach and that coach, and good team will pop up and disappear. But there's no really efficient system where it's all moving forward all the time, and it's certainly hard to make it consistent. And then if you just look at historical records, man, like even things simple as like the AAU power rankings from the younger girls. North Carolina is the 37th out of 50 states in talent over the last 25 years in terms of their power rankings. And it's because we're fragmented. It's because we got coaches that try to do everything, do all the heavy lifting all by themselves for everything involved with the process. And there's not a lot of people that have been able to say, let's get together and bring great coaches together and do something awesome. So we have a really big opportunity here to change this and turn it into a perfectly efficient, a totally united, and a national leader and aspiring student athletes, getting them moving forward in the game. And it comes from really just a couple different things, right? Like the group of people that we have here on this call, not even on the call, but the ones that are part of what we're trying to do, we have got incredible talent. But the key is we got to create a structure where everybody can contribute and we can quickly communicate and make adjustments and do things that empower all of us to take our gifts and move them forward so we can really apply that to these kids. And then we got to take that and put resources with it and get everybody going down proven paths that work. And so I really want to talk to you about like specifically what our vision is with Carolina Elite about how we're going to do that. So basically it's kind of like a 5-step deal. And I try to make this as simple as I can so that it doesn't get into a long, lengthy conversation. And by the way, I'll make this PowerPoint available to any of y'all. I can send it to you by email afterwards if you text me your email address if you want to have it to review later. But step one, we got to find the top contributing coaches and the trainers and get them all together. Now, sometimes some of us want to keep our brand or our reputation or whatever, and that's fine, that's cool, but we got to be working together as a network, because we can do more together than we can separately. And then in that, I think we have to be committed to really make sure we really helping every kid. There's so many situations I've seen over the years where a coach is really only committed to the best kid, and then they put all their eggs in that basket to try to get behind that best kid, and lo and behold, the kid that was second or third or fourth is in the gym working and getting better and better, and one day you look up and they done missed what they really should have had their attention on. So like, we got to focus on every kid in the program to get to the finish line, and we got to use our talents to get them there. So we got to get together, get focused on making sure every kid is getting to the finish line. Step 2 is we got to look at all the different tracks that people can get there, right? There's more than one way to get these kids to the college scholarship destination. And there's, in fact, several different tracks, but we got to look at all of them, and we got to put resources in every one of them so that we're not losing any opportunities to take a kid to the finish line. And I'll explain a little bit more of that in a minute. The individuals within our network, they can't just focus in their role, but like if we're really going to be the best, when we figure out who's doing what, and we say, all right, man, Coach Swelling, he's going to take care of this. And, Coach Lynn, he's going to do that. And Coach Andy's going to do this. Like, each one of us, for the benefit of the whole program, has got to own their role, meaning you're going to do it in such a way that nobody can do it better than you. And if we all take that level of sort of pride in our work and our contribution, and we working together, we're not going to be stepping on each other's toes. We're going to be working unified to really get kids way further than any of us could do ourselves. And so there's a lot of roles there, but we'll talk about that as we go. And we've talked about that with a lot of you already. 4th step, a lot of collaboration. We learning every day, man. We seeing things that are good, seeing things that are great, seeing things that are jacked up and ain't working. We have to talk every day. And the larger the group of people gets that's trying to serve this community of kids, the more unique personalities we got to have, and the harder it is to make everybody happy. But we have to be committed to the end result of getting these kids to the finish line in such a way that we're willing to take the time to talk about it, and not like in such a way where we're going behind one another's back, but like say, look, man, I understand you feel this way, such and such feels that way. Let's talk about it and find a solution, versus taking the shortcuts and just trying to, go do what we think, independent of the rest of the group, is the right thing for the kids. And if we work together every day, we're going to accomplish a lot for these kids. And then the last piece is that we have to celebrate as a group. For, if we put a team that goes out there and competes at the top of the game, and we put a Carolinas United team out there, and they go down there and we see Mo's United team from Atlanta in the championship, and we win that game, every single one of us who contributed to that process needs to be celebrating that not just did we get there, but the whole United family got there, right? Or if we get, all of our kids get college scholarships next year that are the 21s or the 22s. Like, even if you're not the coach, maybe you were the trainer, maybe you weren't the trainer, maybe you're the social media guy. We have to be united that we are trying to get greatness for these kids together. So it's really a lot about looking at ourselves as part of a process to build greatness that's bigger than any one of us can build by themselves. So that's kind of the vision, and it's going to take 3 years because, we already got in last year, but now we're really trying to take a really strong foothold in the Carolinas. And it'll probably take us one more year after this year, because once people realize how serious we are, then we're really going to probably bring in the heavy hitters in the next season around. So it's a 3-year process, I think, before we're really going to be able to say, look what we really did, gang, because it's not going to happen overnight. I'm going to switch gears. This is just a little bit of the framework of some of the teams that we know we have coaches and kids already slotted for. I wanted to show you this, not necessarily because these are locked in stone, but I want you all to understand when I'm talking about tracks and different levels, how that connects. So this is, for example, the 17U teams that we see coming out of the Carolinas next year. And in each one of these, you can kind of see There's either a high major track, a mid major track, there's some low major tracks, and each one of them is valuable. Like, we can't just be like, oh, we got to worry about the top of the top, because that's not true. I mean, there's amazing opportunities to get these kids in the low major situations, and there's coaches starving to find those kids. So we're putting resources in each track. But these are some of the teams and the tracks and some of the coaches that we know are part of what's going on. A lot of teams have just kind of come up under our roof. These are the Carolina Elite teams. Now, these do not represent Rob's teams with the Queen City group. It doesn't represent any of Alexis's teams with the Rain. This is just pure Carolina Elite teams that we know we have on the radar. And there's a couple more that we'll have a discussion with. This is 7 teams with us. Somebody got some static on the line. You might want to mute your line if you think you're putting out static. We got 23 teams. What's going on here? Hang on. We got 723 teams. And again, all different tracks, high major, mid major, low major. We got them in different cities: Raleigh, Atlanta, Winston, Charlotte, Greensboro, High Point. A lot of different coverage. And again, the thing you need to get here is not so much which team is doing what, but that we have high, mid, and low tracks, and we're infiltrating a lot of different cities in both the North Carolina and South Carolina with talented people. All right. And then we also have some 24, 25 teams coming up. And there's probably a couple more of these that I don't yet know about. But these 18 teams are what we took to the board, and we said, listen, we are doing some serious funding to put together a package of resources. And these 18 teams, we've got budgets for, and we're working to make sure that they have everything they need in terms of support, travel, gear, so on and so forth. So there may be a couple others, but this is what we know of so far. Let me switch gears real quick and talk about these tracks, right? Coach Foster gave me a piece of vocabulary that I had never heard before, and I'm going to use it from now on because it's so real. It said, listen, we try to get,
Lynn,
yes, sir.
Excuse me for a second.
Yeah.
Adrian is in the waiting room. Can you let him in?
Yes, sir. Thank you for interrupting me. Let me find him. Yeah, so if anybody got something, it's got to just, I'm just rolling because I'm trying to get to the end and be conscious of your time. But if you need to interrupt me, just feel free. All right. So now let's talk about these tracks, okay? As I was saying, Coach Foster, he used this concept of Lynn. We're going to get all these kids in the D-free lane, right? Basically, it don't matter if it's Division I or mid-major, high major, D2, JUCO, NAIA. We know these coaches are willing to provide scholarships. Where did it go? Oh my goodness, hang on. My fault, fellas. To each of these lanes. And so what we're trying to do is put resources in each of these paths, okay? Now I can tell you that Mo and a few select people are uniquely gifted to support the Division I high major track. What he's been able to do there and be able to recruit kids from all over the world and all over the country to come and be in that track is very difficult for somebody to replicate the work that Mo has done. So he has to be involved in that track. Conversely, you know, I got 40 or 50 mid-major coaches and a few D2 coaches that harass me to death because of the kids that I've assembled in our group in the last 4 or 5 years. And so I tend to migrate more in that mid-major track, right? There's some coaches and some guys that want to be a part of this as well, that we got a lot of kids that are in the lower, the Division II, Division III, NAIA, JUCO track, and we want to resource all of the tracks so that we are putting kids that can get offers from the right lanes by where they play in, who they're playing with, and how they play and how they train. So there's 3 tracks. Those are the 3 tracks. My screen is tripping out on me, so hang with me just for 1 sec. I got to try to figure out why this won't go off my screen. It's like I'm stuck here in Never Neverland. I apologize. So are y'all seeing this participant block in the middle of y'all screen on mine? Like, are y'all being able to see that? Okay, I got it to go away. Hopefully that's working. So This is an example of a schedule that you might find for the high major, right? There's UAA, we got some Adidas stuff, you know, the war games, inside exposure. Now, I will tell you, war games, inside exposure, those events, we have direct control over the schedules. So we know if you got a Division I team, we can play them against Division I teams, and it'll be good games, and the colleges will be excited to watch that. But sometimes you can also put the Division II, Division III kids in there, and we have to put them against the right teams. But this is an example of a D1 high major, mid major track. Another, what is going on? There's other tracks, you know, you could do more of a mid low major. This is kind of an example of what next year might look like in a low major track. These dates and events are actually scheduled. So for those of you that haven't looked much about what's going on next year, these can be some helpful dates. And then, you know, also these are some great events that have the opportunity to showcase the D2, D3, and IA kids. And you'll notice they still have some stuff with inside exposure and war games because, again, as I said, when the kids come to that, we can put them in the right lane to play against kids that's going to be in that similar path, and we'll be able to get them the right kind of look for the right kind of schools. You know, so that's really the nice thing about the war games situation and the inside exposure stuff is that Mo and his staff on war games and John and those guys up there with inside exposure, they're just really smart about how they build schedules to get the team so they're playing at the right level. All right, so I'm gonna move on, but there's different tracks and we're gonna try to put kids in all of them. Okay, so many of you have asked about, well, do I keep my team? Do my kids got to move around? Do I, you know, how does this all going to work? This is what Andy and I have talked about. I've also talked about with some of the other leaders about what we think needs to happen. We think that these 3 weekends are probably going to be the target weekends in March to do weekend long practice weekends. And which would mean we would drive somewhere. We have a Friday night session, a Saturday morning session, Saturday afternoon session. If it's the highest level kids, we might even keep them and do a Sunday session, especially if we're going down to Atlanta, because you don't want to have to drive to Atlanta more times than is necessary. But over these 3 weekends, there's going to be a lot of competitive situations where these kids got to work. And we all going to really take a serious assessment of what can they do? What level are they at? And like the first weekend, we'll really try to figure out, okay, the post players, these are the highest level, these are the medium level, these are the ones that need some work. The guards, same thing. And we'll just kind of, in a general sense, in the first weekend, come away with an understanding of which kids need to be on the higher competitive track, which kids need to be on the lower competitive track. The second weekend, we'll come in, we'll put those kids that we've already kind of figured out what lanes they're in, we'll put them against each other head to head. And we'll see, like, all right, is it Susie or is it Sally or is it Kirsten? Like, which one is it that's going to rise to the top out of these 3 or 4 kids? And we'll create situations in those workouts so we really can figure out who is going to be the best candidate for which slots. And then that last weekend, I think what that's going to be is more of like, okay, we think we know the starting point of where we should be with all these teams and these coaches and these kids. And what we will do that weekend is we'll set it up where the kids that we think are where they need to be, they're going to be working with that group, and it'll almost be like a team practice, but we'll put several teams in each facility so that they are practicing a little bit, they're getting some workouts, and they're finishing up these discovery items about which kids are really should be in which lanes. And I envision this being a community decision, like Mo, myself, a couple other folks that I know we can trust their opinion on and say, look, this is what we think we need to start. And at the end of the day, Mo's got more experience putting rosters together than anybody. So if we really don't think we can come to a perfect conclusion, we'll ask him to weigh in and give us his opinion. It's not a perfect science. And I think all of us need to prepare our parents that, look, we're going to build something that ain't never been done like this. And we believe it's going to produce results that are far superior to anything that's ever been accomplished. They got to trust us a little bit on how we put this together and realize that it ain't permanent, which brings me to this player mobility discussion. So let's say we have 3 weeks of tryouts and workouts, and we walk out of there with a general framework of who needs to play where and with who. Obviously, we're going to make some mistakes. It ain't going to be perfect the first time. It just ain't. And so the thought process is this: every practice, every game is an evaluation. If we put a kid in a group that is clearly over their head, we're going to know it quick. All right. If we put a kid in a group that they out there and they beating everybody else to death, we're going to know they need to be moved into a different situation. So together, what we're trying to do is be mindful of getting the skill gap as tight as we can on every team. In other words, the best player to the worst player has the smallest amount of skill gap. And by doing that, we can get laser focused with every team about where we're going to play them, at what level, in front of which coaches, so that every kid on the team has the opportunity to really shine when they're playing at their best. So that's important. Mobility is going to be happening, and we're going to move kids all summer long. I mean, the notion that you got in and now you're guaranteed to stay there for the whole summer, like, that's just not how the world works. I mean, everything we do, man, is competitive. And so, like, if you go out there and I made the team, I'm on the big bad team, and you out there not showing up for practice or not giving 100%, like, it's real world to be like, hey, you know what? Somebody else is kind of working harder than you. We're going to slide them up this week. This will be a difficult thing, but when people buy into it and we commit to ourselves as coaches that we're going to support each other in this, I promise you, everybody will fall in line. And Mo can speak to that, because at United, don't nobody question it. They've been doing it this way since, I don't know, 3 years ago. And it's unquestionable that it works. But it is different, all right, than a lot of these, okay, let's have a tryout, pick 7 kids, 8 kids, and we're going to go play all summer long. That's not how this one's set up. All right, I'm going to move on. And again, we'll come back and we can do questions in a little bit too. All right. Mo says this all the time, and I get it. Like, we have to remember as coaches that we're not taking these girls to the prom. Like, we love these kids. We want them to get to the finish line. But, like, if it's a better situation for them to move over and play in a different lane, but maybe they're a trophy player and I want to have the best team in the state, and I got this trophy player that can make it done. That's not the point. The point is, let's get everybody playing in a lane that they all can get seen, and let's minimize the skill gaps. If we fall in love with a kid and we hold that kid in a spot, we're not just going to hurt that kid by putting them in a skill gap problem with some other kids that maybe can't play at that level or whatnot, but we're hurting the kids around them now become dependent on what that kid is doing versus them getting better themselves. So, like, we have to be conscious to not, like, get fixated on a kid being a certain spot. And then lastly, I want to say this, and I really, really mean this. And a lot of people, most of you know me, maybe a lot of people don't, but I am very unusual in this regard, okay? I don't like any kid to feel like they're less than somebody else. I know, we all know there's some kids that cannot do what other kids can do. They just won't given that gift. But if we let them in the door and we put them on a team and we put them in the program, oh, by golly, man, we're going to treat them like they belong here. They're going to get the same nice looking gear. They're going to get the same shooting shirts. They're going to get the same access to trainers. They're going to get the same support when we travel. I mean, we're going to put them in the same hotels. When we do activities, they're always going to be 100% treated with all the respect. And if somebody in our system has got a kid or two that they're not very good and they've kind of shoved them off to the side and don't invite them to stuff, you're not seeing the big picture. Because every one of these kids got a lane, a D-free lane to get to play ball in college. We just got to continue to resource them. So that's a pet peeve of mine. And, I will personally go out of my way to make sure that every kid knows how much they're cared about and that they're loved and they belong here. All right. Okay, so trainers and process. Big picture, these kids and these parents got to understand they're expected to be in the gym as much as it takes. If they're not getting offers, if they're not getting accolades, they're not getting recognized because they're not getting out there and getting it done, then they need to be in the gym more. And not just in the gym, but they need to be in the gym with purpose and with people that know what's going on and teach them how to play better at a higher level. We got some incredible trainers. I mean, Heck, Alexis might be one of the best trainers that's ever been on the earth because of her background. And Andy is an incredible trainer. And I know you all have your own trainers, but kids and parents like, well, I thought we had practice on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Well, you might have practice on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, but it might also be Thursdays and Fridays and Saturdays and Sundays too. It's like, where are you getting your job done? So training has got to happen all the time. Obviously, people like to make excuses. And then the kids that are really killers, they don't make no excuses. They just living in the gym. So we got to bring the level of expectation. These kids got to be in the gym as much as it takes. And then some people want to skip practices because they training with their trainer. And I think that can be a problem too, because I think when you're in these tournaments, sometimes the very best games ain't till you get to the end. You might have 8 of the best individually talented kids on the planet, but if they can't go out there and execute a simple offensive set or a inbounds play to get a bucket at the end of the game and win it, and the team don't advance, then they're going to miss the best game. So if a coach says you need to be here on practice, like, the training shouldn't supersede your practices, but coaches, we got to do a real good job of not scheduling team practices when we know that it's hard for the kids to get there. So the point is, if you don't have a trainer in your area that you believe can get your kids where they need to be, then you got to get with us and let us get you one. Hang on, Neil, you trying to get in, Neil?
Yeah, I was trying to get in.
I got you. Yeah, I got you in right now. You coming in? All right, you good. So if you don't have a trainer that you feel good that can get your kids where they need to be, you need to get with us and let us get one involved. And then your coaches can do your coaching.
Hey, Lad, I got somebody trying to get in too. This is Coach Rob.
Okay, you got somebody trying to get in now? Okay, I'll let everybody in that I see in the waiting room, so we should be good. If somebody's still out there, hit me back. Okay, moving on. So practices with your teams, you know, maybe they're less frequent than your trainings will be, but they're both important. And all these kids got to be doing their part to make it so their team is getting where they need to be. Real briefly on the training topic, FBC Academy, we launched it this year. Mixed bag. We had a real good turnout in the South Carolina area. We had a good turnout in the Raleigh-Durham area. The Charlotte's group, it kind of fizzled out. I don't know if we did a great job of communicating it to all the kids, but when we're not in travel season, then we are offering academy. An academy is basically a training opportunity. It's a venue that kids from all clubs can come in, get trained. We make it super, super cheap. And if you participate in academy workouts, then we do 1 or 2 live stream showcase events each month that you can come in and play and compete. And we're going to stream out your actual gameplay. About 40 or 50 college coaches that follow us. And we had some good success with that, but we did have sort of a lesser participation in the Charlotte group in terms of the actual training. Interestingly, on our first one we did, we had 126 subscribers on the first one, and I know at least 60 of them were connected to some sort of coaches. So that was really good. I mean, to do something like that and have, 50 or 60 coaches and 120 some people subscribing to the feed, and the very first one we did was pretty strong. We had a mixed bag after that, but Academy will run in the fall. It may run too, like if the high school season, you know how some high schools finish up earlier than others. We may throw some academy sessions in February for the kids that are done. We're waiting on the kids that ain't done to get finished. So we'll put those where they need to be. COVID-19 readiness. So this is something we all got to take into account, man. And I think this is where we absolutely grabbed a lot of horns this year and really made a big difference. Coach Neil, I can hear you talking, big guy.
I'm here. I'm going to mute it right quick.
Okay, cool. So with COVID, we all got to recognize a couple things have really changed, right? And in that change, there's opportunities for us to take control or take market share, right? first of all, the obvious is a lot of clubs didn't even play this year, right? And they didn't even really compete. There's no real competitions in North Carolina because the governor has got us on lockdown. But in that, there's a lot of players that are like, hey, I want to go play basketball. So when we set up shop and started doing stuff in South Carolina and Georgia and Alabama, and we were like, hey, we'll take you down there every week if necessary, we picked up a lot of kids this year that used to play for somebody else that said, you know, I want to play and my team ain't playing, right? That is likely to continue for quite some time. So we have to be aware of the fact that we're going to continue to play. We may have to do it in South Carolina. We may have to do it in Georgia, but we have access to gyms in South Carolina and Georgia, and they're readily available for us on a very quick notice when we need to get them. In fact, we stand ready to launch a competitive weekend league at any moment. Like if Cooper comes out in 2 weeks and says, hey, we're not going to have school basketball, the very next week we'll start a league and we'll put it in Columbia, or we can put it in Fort Mill, or we can put some in both sides, and we'll get all the teams that want to play and get them in there, and we'll play basketball and we'll do training sessions. Like we're not going to stop just because North Carolina is behind like everybody else in terms of realizing that you can do this safely if you take the right precautions. In this COVID-19 landscape, we also found out something crazy that we never anticipated, and that is that college coaches are figuring out how to use film and are getting kind of comfortable with it. Like, I realize that we all would rather see them sitting on the sidelines and they want to watch the games in person, but the fact that they can watch 50 games in a weekend in their pajamas and never leave their house, if it's indexed and cataloged properly, like that's a very powerful tool for these coaches to really see a lot of kids. So because we film everything we do and we catalog every film that we make, and most of the games we stat them, we have found that our YouTube page has gotten crazy traction from college coaches. So we are ready to continue to move our program forward, even if North Carolina stays behind or more conservative than the surrounding states. Now, I'm not trying to say that COVID-19 ain't real, and it ain't. I mean, I realize there's risk, and our kids realize there's risk, and we don't, as a general rule, I don't think we would hold it against anybody says, I don't want to go, I don't want to play, I'm scared of COVID. Like, I get that, and that's fine, but there's a whole bunch of kids that are seriously talented hoopers that want to play and keep moving forward, and we're here to create a lane for them to do that while the other clubs ain't really figured out how to do it. All right, now I'm getting to this last piece here, and then we'll do Q&A. We are building the best college recruiting tools that our girls game has ever seen. And I want to run you through this process that we have built. So first of all, in 2021, we're going to have 3 different dedicated staff member recruiting coordinators. These recruiting coordinators are for Carolina Elite teams, and they're going to be acting on behalf of every single kid on these rosters. They will be making individual calls to the college coaches and scheduling personal calls between the student athlete and the coaches. In addition, they're going to work hand in hand with the team coach to coordinate things, film. They're going to be talking to the player. They'll be working with the player's family and even their high school coaches. Like we have 3 dedicated people. One will be at the high major, mid-major level. One will be mid-major D2 level, and one will be NAIA D3 and JUCO. And each one are going to be dedicated to take it as a job and get compensated for their work in these 3 lanes. All right. So no other club has 3 different recruiting coordinators working for their student athletes that I'm aware of in the state. So that's one piece. All right. Their performance, their compensation is performance based. The more connections that these recruiting coordinators make for college coaches and kids to connect, and as well as follow-up calls and school visits and getting kids to their elite camps, and even when they get offers, every one of those activities creates a compensation bonus for our recruiting coordinators. So they are being paid for results. All right. And we're making a very serious investment in this area. Second of all, there's a vast hole right now with a lot of the D2, D3, JUCO, NAIA schools that they can't see kids. I mean, they don't have the money their schools don't have the budget to buy film and subscribe to places that, are going to, charge them to get to see some of these big tournaments. So they pay for one or two, they see a couple of games, and that's the end. There's a whole bunch of these schools that are really in a little bit of a recruiting desert for kids. So we're going to be filling the need for those colleges that we believe in the years to come, they will be thankful for the work that we've put into this, because we are helping them solve a problem, not just helping our kids get connected. We have a state-of-the-art media team. Our media team this year will have 6 different full-time videographers, 2 different webmasters, and 2 master film editors. This team of people will be going to every event and filming everything from highlight reels to player clips to game films to doing stats. And we work together. We've built a cloud-based system where we can share all this media in real time. And our editors are going to be constantly working to edit and pushing out all this content. And this content is really where we can get establish ourselves as way ahead of everybody else. If you think about it, we're going to have 140 to 170 kids playing high school basketball under our Carolina Elite brand next year. And we're going to have film for at least 4 or 5 games for every one of them kids. In addition, all sorts of like interviews and highlights and things that kind of go with it. Being able to have that stuff cataloged and easily accessible and as a toolkit for our recruiting coordinators to share that information with college coaches at the tip of their fingers is very much going to set us apart. That content will be pushed daily to our social channels, which is YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, Field Level, and TikTok. It'll go straight to our websites. We'll have stuff on the FBC Strong website, the FBC Exposure website, our Carolina Elite basketball website. And then a lot of that content will be curated and produced and made available to our scouting services that we partner with, that we have relationships with, including Blueprint, Inside Exposure, Prep Girls Hoops, and Carolina Girls Hoops. But this is a serious investment on our part to create this team and this flow of content, and not just content, but like high quality, very carefully edited and curated with very specific intent to highlight our kids' capabilities. A lot of that content will land on the individual player websites. This is a sample of the screenshot. Like, this is my daughter's little webpage. We used her as the dummy to create the platform, but it's live right now. So like anybody wants to go see it, but every player in our club will have a website. And their individual website, it will have their stats, it'll have access to their Twitter feed, it'll have highlights from their games, it'll have their current transcript, it'll have a way you can contact the kid's coach, it'll have scouting reports. If anybody wants to see what that really looks like, you're welcome to jump on your phone or your computer and you go to FBCexposure.com and then put in /Zoe-Adams. Again, she's just the first one we made as a sample, but we're going to have one for every kid in the program. And it's the investment to do this is, again, it hasn't been done before. And we believe in this COVID era when coaches can't see kids and they have a hard time getting the information, putting this information in front of them at a moment's notice and having recruiting coordinators to connect this data to these coaches is going to put us light years in front of these other clubs. All right, so again, that's FBCexposure.com /Zoe-Adams if you want to see a sample of what that looks like, and it's actually up and running at the moment. All right, coming down the final stretch here. From a funding standpoint, this is what we have budgeted and what we are attempting to do with our budget. Our goal is that this year the club will provide very high quality uniforms for every player. There'll be brand consistency. Obviously, we know we got some kids doing UAA, some are doing Adidas. So we'll have some different stuff, but there will be consistent design protocol in place for those. We also want to make sure that the kids know that these uniforms are the property of the club. they're too expensive for us to give them to them and then have them disappear. Every uniform really needs to be maintained in like a like new condition. And if we take good care of the uniforms, each one should last 2 or 3 years. But, you know, I know like the Under Armour uniforms are for a top, a bottom, home and away. Those 4 pieces is by the time you get all the embellishments and stuff done, it's about $270 per set. So we don't want these things disappearing, and each coach will have to help us make sure that these things don't disappear. But every kid will have a high quality, high level uniform. In addition to that, we're going to provide backpacks, shooting shirts, shoes, but we're going to give each coach the choice. Do they want us to get them shoes for their kids, or they want $800 to go put towards something something else they need for their team? I hate shoes because it don't matter what you do. Somebody don't want to wear them. Something don't fit. I don't know. So if you don't need shoes, you want to do something different, we're going to have a budget there for that. Travel assistance. We're going to have a certain amount of money set aside for every team to help them to cover the cost of travel. In addition, FBC as an organization is doing some negotiations so that we go to some of these big events like war games. We're going to try to rent like entire hotels. So we'll have really super discounted rates, but each team in the Carolina Elite Network will have money to go towards helping them to keep the cost low for their kids to travel. All right. And then we have a no player left behind policy. If you got a kid on your team that just financially cannot make this happen, then there's a process to let us know who they are, and we'll kind of go through a qualification, but we'll cover up to 90% of their costs. We're never going to pay 100% because then people take advantage of us. There's people out there that think just because they're so good, we should pay for everything. Like if you think they're that good and you won't pay for 10%, we pay for 90%, and we show that they need the financial need, maybe we can make that work, but we can't pay 100% for anybody because we've just been taken advantage of before. So that's from a budgeting standpoint. That's for all the Carolina Elite teams. We're covering all the tournament entry fees. There's a couple of instances where maybe you have to pay a little bit of something, but we don't ask any of our teams to pay these entry fees. We cover them, but we have to know their schedules and they have to be approved in advance. We'll cover the coaches' travel costs. Again, we have to know your schedules and it has to be approved in advance. We don't want to ask coaches to dig into their pocket to pay money to make a significant influence in the kid's life. Like we can help you with that financial part. We don't want you to have to come out of pocket to do it yourself. And then just from a funding standpoint, you know, we've had an enormous amount of funding. Carolina Elite was started as a Christian-based ministry. We've worked with the National Christian Foundation for about 10 years now. And we have been approved and have pledged money. We've got $1 million pledge for the next 3 years for us to actually unify the Carolinas and continue the work that we've started, where we're going to show these kids incredible love, and we're going to try to share Jesus with them as we can. You know, we're not going to chase them around with Bibles and expect them to live like saints, but you know, there'll be times where, you know, we'll be doing some devotionals. The coaches will get together and we'll do a quick Bible study, or there'll be opportunity we go do service projects. But, you know, we continue to support these kids through a lot of Christian families that are donating money because they know we got these kids on the weekends and they ain't getting to church, and we're in a perfect position to share with them and to model behavior for them and to be leaders for them. So the $1 million that's been approved, basically we're getting ready to make trying to purchase a building for our kids here in the Raleigh area that's going to require $550,000 down payment. And then we have $150,000 a year for the next 3 years to operate all these teams. This is a picture of the building that we're getting ready to try to get this purchase done. And we ask everybody to continue to pray for us, because this would be a real blessing for all our kids in the Raleigh-Durham area to be able to have access to a facility like this. And then lastly, before we do Q&A, I want to make sure everybody knows we do have a club-wide service project opportunity where we're gathering everything from toothpaste, toothbrushes, deodorant, razor, shaving cream, snacks, hats, gloves, blankets. We're collecting this all over the state, and there's a couple churches that are connected, some families in the Raleigh-Durham area. We're going to try to get these things delivered the week before Christmas. So I know you probably just felt like you just got hit with a fire hose powered information, but I want to turn it over to you guys to kind of ask questions, and we can kind of go in any direction you want as far as the questions go.